So I started writing again in 2009, soon after my arrival back in Adelaide from the truncated stay near Abu Dhabi in the desert at Madinat Zaid. That awful house in the desert, which I eventually got into, with pigeons, pigeon droppings everywhere. It was like something out of a Hitchcock movie. I left Madinat Zaid early due to a combination of a feeling of concern about the domestic situation in Adelaide and increasing dissatisfaction with my situation in my job and in the desert. I felt very isolated. Anyway, when I got back to Adelaide, the situation in the house was not good. Both my son and my daughter were having serious adjustment problems to Australia. They had lost their peer group support, and having lived a comfortable and productive lifestyle in Brunei, it must have been challenging for them to adjust to Adelaide, where they knew no one and no one knew them. Second, third, and fourth generation migrants to Australia are all mostly unaware of the challenges which face the new arrival to Australia. In some cases, they have just forgotten what their parents and grandparents went through. Maria was having a tough time. In Maria's eyes, the younger Nixons could do no wrong, and she continued to support them selflessly without any concern for her own health, even though she had a job herself to do as well. I wasn't there for those first few months, and I don't think I would have seen things in the same way as she did. She told me enough details for me to know it had been an absolutely awful time for everyone. The mistake I made was thinking that my return would improve things. I hadn't considered the possibility that I would actually make things worse. In retrospect, if it was a mistake to come back from Madinat Zaid, then it was an honest mistake. I just wanted to help. However, after only a few days in Adelaide, I knew, in fact we both knew, that if I joined the house, that little small place they were in, the tension would be much greater, because I would try to attempt to establish boundaries. Boundaries which it became clear very quickly Maria would not feel comfortable supporting. All of this was more implicit, though, than explicit. Our children, quote, were now teenagers, and we had not faced this type of challenge before. You only get one chance at parenting teenagers, and there is no manual. Our children will also find this out someday, should they have teenagers of their own to parent. Maria and I had not had to coordinate heretofore on the details of crisis management. The truth is that there had been very few crises heretofore in our family. Our children had all been very straightforward and easy to manage for most of our time in Brunei. So after a few days, it was a no-brainer. We both started looking for a place for me to stay, which was close by, but would mean I would not be part of the, quote, management team on a daily basis. Maria wanted to do that herself. So that is how we found Alice. Alice was a recently arrived Chinese migrant. And like all Chinese, she was polite, businesslike, and the house was fine. It was about 2 kilometers away, and I could cycle there every day to the other house. I had no trouble living in Alice's house, even though all the other occupants were young Chinese females. Unfortunately, very soon after I moved in, I had a pulmonary embolism, a major medical episode, which is another story soon to be told. After recovering from this embolism, in April, I got a job at Flinders University, also known as Disney University, preparing overseas students for entry into the university system here in Adelaide. So each day in the afternoon, I would call in to the family to see what was going on. It took me a while to get on top of the teaching as it was challenging. There was no program, and each teacher wrote their own program. This required a lot of preparation. I later taught a similar program at the University of South Australia, but there was a prepared, coherent, off-the-shelf program there, which was much easier to handle on arrival as a new lecturer. I was living quite far away from Flinders, so I eventually moved from Alice's closer to the university. It was all challenging at first, but I got the hang of it after a while at the Disney University. In my experience, each ESL workplace has its own working culture. Workplace culture, in fact, was the subject of my of my doctoral thesis, so I do have a special interest in it. Now, I know you Aussies don't like academic theses. For one thing, none of you have ever asked me anything about mine. So just to put the record straight, I do apologize for being interested in my work. Most of my colleagues don't even know I did a thesis, which is as it should be for all you true Aussies, and for a prospective wannabe Aussie such as myself. After all, what difference could it possibly make to me as an educator to have studied and analysed my own workplace? What a load of pretentious academic crap. Yes, I know. And yes, I confess it was a thesis by distance, and not a real one like they do at Cambridge. But in my defense, the exchange rate was so bad in those days that I just didn't have the money to sell my properties and pay some pommy supervisor to supervise me. No, I did not take 3 years off at the taxpayer's expense to do it either. I did it while I was working in Brunei. In fact, I want to take this opportunity to officially apologize for doing a thesis. I mean, it was very un-Australian. I understand that. Don't take it personally. I realize now that after being in Australia for so many years, the reason I haven't been accepted or been able to get a job is because of these truly meaningless academic qualifications which I have collected. And I know that lots of you good Aussie folks are threatened by these academic qualifications, which is why you don't ask me about them. I've learned my lesson. I hereby vow not to do any more thesis or research again. In my defense, it was a survival thing, really. I just had to analyze my workplace in Brunei in order to stay sane and survive the morons who were running it. It was a rash thing to do, but there, I did it. Recently, at the Disneyland University, I worked for 7 months without any paid leave. Actually, I wouldn't say recently, but this was 2011. And I worked there for 7 months without any paid leave or anything as a casual contract. So in October, when I felt I was kind of in the groove, doing okay, I asked the American Highness about the possibility of a contract. She was the director of studies and the owner of the place. "Oh, don't leave this room," she said, less positive than when you came in. Uh, she said, kind of enigmatically. "I'm quite sure what to make of that. But I'm not quite sure about enrollment," she said, "in the new year. Can you give me a week to think about it?" "Okay, no worries," I said. So in November, after a 10-day wait, I asked Highness again, but Her Highness had changed tack a little. "Well, actually," she said, "enrollments are not looking so good now for the new year." "Okay," I said. "No problem." I knew and already understood. But then she threw me a real curly one, as they say in Australia. She went on, "Oh, by the way, some students said that you were in the room when the teacher evaluations were done." Taken aback and more than a little nonplussed, flabbergasted in fact, by this, I managed to recover a little and blurt out, but Highness," I said, "I thought everybody did that." "Well, that's what I used to do in Brisbane anyway. That's what we all did. Didn't seem to bother anybody there." I thought it doesn't make any difference whether one's anyone in the room or not. There's always going to be at least one spoiled brat who'll write anything about their teacher, even if they're sitting in front of you. Some of them have got a real brass neck. That's why they pay the money, it's for the privilege of complaining. "Oh, no, you shouldn't be in the room when the evaluations are done," said Highness. "Oh," I said, "nobody told me that. I didn't realize that." Although she didn't say it, the inference clearly was that, although my evaluations were good, the students felt intimidated by my mighty presence in the room. So in the space of 10 days, Highness had changed from being on the point of offering me a contract to implying that my competence was in question. This worried me more than a little because I had recently moved house just to be near Disneyland University. So confident did I feel that I enjoyed the confidence of Her Highness. Anyway, in the December session, I made bloody sure the evaluations were done when I was outside the bloody room. And guess what? By some fluke, the evaluations were 100% perfect. She showed me them. Yeah. "Oh, Highness will be pleased," I thought to myself. Well, I could not have been more wrong. Christmas passed, with doubts growing at the back of my paranoid little Irish brain. Then in January it happened. Highness announced to the members of the Mushroom Club, that is the casual staff, of which I was a founding member, that there would be no work for all 6 of us casual teachers in the next session. In February, the dreaded last day arrived at the University of Disney, almost exactly 9 months after my arrival. "What's this?" I said to myself. No farewell from Her Highness? No thank you for all the work little old me had put in? Not even "I'll try and give you some relief classes"? But there were other surprises to come. One casual teacher was actually retained, the youngest and the cheapest. So much for loyalty. Then, just to add insult to injury, another teacher was taken on. Well, message for myself and the other hard-working, loyal casuals in the Mushroom Club. You're crap. Message received. Over and out, Your Highness. But there was worse to come. Apart from the members of the Mushroom Club, there was not a single word of support from my colleagues at Disneyland, not even a phone call. Then there was one final piece of news from the University of Disney. There was a message from Her Highness. She had told her teaching spouse to tell another teacher in the Mushroom Club to tell me that Her Highness would be very happy to give me a good reference for any future jobs I might apply for. So kind and generous of her to do so.